Double poling. Let's start with double poling. This technique is the basis of good skating technique and is used in biathlon for mass starts and when beginning a descent on a gentle slope. There are two phases in double poling, the push-off and the glide. The push-off starts when the skier plants the poles and ends with a full arm extension. It accounts for about 40% of the double poling cycle. The glide starts when the push-off ends and finishes when the skier plants the poles. Let us look at each phase of this technique. The push-off is the energy generated by the hip, abdominal, and arm muscles and is used to propel the skier forward. It starts when the poles are planted forward, the baskets in front of the bindings, and at an angle of 80 degrees between the snow and the poles. The skier's center of gravity is high and over the toes, with the weight resting on the poles. In this position, the skier's hips are aligned with the bindings, and the arms are extended forward so that the elbow is bent with a 110-degree angle between the forearm and the upper arm. At the shoulder, the angle between the arm and the torso is between 85 and 95 degrees, depending on the length of the poles. These angles must be maintained for the first phase of the movement. The hands are held just below shoulder height. The hips are relatively straight, the knees slightly bent, and the ankles are bent at an angle of approximately 80 degrees. Look at this athlete from the front. Notice that the hands are slightly farther apart than shoulder width. The push-off begins when the skier plants the poles and then, holding the breath and in a powerful motion, contracts the abdominal muscles and hip flexors. This, combined with the effect of the body weight and locked arms, rapidly propels the skier forward. The only movement is in the hips and lower back. Once in motion, the skier exhales while the trunk moves downward. Once the trunk is almost completely bent over and the arms are vertical, the shoulders begin extending, increasing the power provided by the arms. When the skier's hands are on either side of the body, the elbow extension begins and continues until the arms are completely extended behind the body, forming a straight line with the poles. While the elbows are extended, the knees are slightly bent, and the ankles move back so that the heels are well ahead of the hips. Most of the work is now done. The glide phase is next and involves smoothly returning to the start position and gliding while minimizing trunk movement. In this position, the elbows are bent and the hands held close to the body, with the arms and the trunk moving to the upright position in a linear motion and forming a slight arc. The skier inhales during this phase. When we teach a technique, the movements should be taught in steps. The following are the recommended steps for this technique. Step 1. Start by executing the trunk and hip movements without poles. Focus on the correct position of the various parts of the body and the correct order of movement. Step 2. Without poles, simulate the arm movements, again focusing on the position of the various parts of the body and the correct order of movements. Step 3. Again, without poles, simulate the entire movement, still focusing on the body position and the movement order. Step 4. Now practice the movement of propelling forward and planting the poles. Do this in front of a wall or with a partner to prevent falls. Step 5. Now that the skier knows how to plant the poles, we can practice the trunk and hip movements. Ask the skier to keep the arms straight and maintain the shoulder and elbow angles. Step 6. With the trunk bent, ask the skier to move only the arms. Step 7. Have the skier perform the entire movement, first in slow motion, then at normal speed. Make sure that the movements are in the correct order. Step 8. Various games and activities can be used to maximize power. To emphasize the importance of working both arms equally, have the skier use only one arm and then the other. Compare the difference. You can also calculate the number of double polings needed to cover a certain distance, or the distance covered by a single double poling. Once the skier has accomplished each of these steps, they should be able to master the double poling technique. We have now finished teaching the double poling technique. Although this technique appears to be very simple, it is important to highlight the various details that will allow the skier to use it effectively. The mastery of this technique is important as it forms the basis for the skate technique that is commonly used in the biathlon.